Hello, and welcome to the ICSCS Alpha Part 2 stream. It's really nice to see all of you here again. This is the third stream about ICSCS that I have ever done. Back in the Alpha Part 1 stream, I showcased new features and mechanics along with the changes to the existing features in that specific update. This year marks the second anniversary since the game has been in development. It all started back in July of 2021, where we can see how ICSCS has evolved over the years. Over time, it offered brand new features, changing the way we play the game, whether if we were exploring the facility, helping out other visitors, maintaining the facility infrastructure, or protecting it against invasions. However, this year, development has started to slow down significantly due to college getting in the way. This forces me to work on ICSCS only during the weekends, resulting in less and less progress being made. Thankfully, there are times where I can take a break from college, allowing me to pick up the development of ICSCS once again. With that being said, Alpha Part 2, also known as the Exploration Update, is a continuation of Alpha Part 1, named the Synergetic Update. This update will involve changes made to Alpha Part 1 and will continue where Alpha Part 1 left off. I have so many new things to show you as well, but before I do, I want to show you the changes. During the development of Alpha Part 2, there has been features that were introduced in Alpha Part 1 that had been altered from their previous counterpart. This means you may have to get used to them again, but that's okay. You should be able to get the hang of it within your first time experiencing it. The first change I wanted to talk about is the architecture. Back in Alpha Part 1, the most noteworthy architectural addition is the topside, which is where players can spawn on default, providing if they have not changed the settings. Alpha Part 2 adds a little more with a lost and found area, where visitors can retrieve their lost items, a new viewing area, and the most important part of the update, the new labs in Sublevel 2. This update introduces 3 new labs for you to hang around and play in. Let's go ahead and look into them in more detail. I won't be going into the new viewing area and the lost and found in depth because that has nothing much to offer. So, right now, I'm currently in the parking area, going to show you around the facility. As of right now, there's nothing changed here, considering that this update is actually focused on one thing that I mentioned previously in the Alpha Part 1 stream. If you remember what was it, then you'll know what to expect. Anyways, let's head over to Station Alpha. Here we are, Station Alpha. There are some differences between this update and the Alpha Part 1 update, is that there's now a transit map, which tells you when is the next train going to arrive. If it's taking a really long time, you can simply use the bridge that leads you to Station Beta. There are also platform screen doors for safety measures as well, so you won't walk onto the tracks. Station Alpha entrance station towards Station Beta reactor station. Attention all passengers. Due to COVID-19 safety measures, we regret to inform you that the train capacity has been in the internal transit. There's slight differences. There's a light which tells if the doors are closing or opening, and a display which tells you where the train is right now. Anyways, off we go. Next station, Station Beta Reactor Station. You're now at Station Beta Reactor Station. Exit through both doors. Attention all passengers. Due to COVID-19 safety measures, we regret to inform you that the train capacity has been limited. Now, let's head down to sub-level 2, since there's new things there. By the way, every elevator going from sub-level 1 to sub-level 6 is equipped with a directory which tells you about what areas are in every sub-level. Currently, sub-level 3 and 4 does not have anything in there yet, as it will be coming in pre-beta. Oh, there's one thing that I forgot to mention. Every floor has its directory, which highlights where you are now, and tells you about the contents of the floor, similar to the directories in the elevator. I should definitely head to the labs now, since it's the most noteworthy area to go for this update. Also, gone were the old directories that were plastered on the walls, and there's now an overhead directional sign, which is easier to follow. Let's start off with the biology labs. There are two rooms in these labs. One of them is the place where you can analyze your sample, and the other is where you can collect some samples so you can analyze them. Think of it as the starting point in your analysis journey, as things can get more complex over time. This is by far the smallest lab, but it offers a vast amount of gameplay from it. Next is the physics lab, the largest lab in this game. Before I show you the big stuff, I wanted to show you the room on the left. In here, you can perform small experiments, but for the larger ones, check this out. This is the object launcher. You can launch basically anything as long as it's a tool that you can grab. There's a viewing area at the right side of the room, so you can get a side view of the whole experiment going on. This is the wind and air testing. In here, you can build structures and test if your structure is able to survive a wind and air simulation. You can even head into the area yourself, but be careful, you can also take damage while you're in it. So try to stay clear while you're testing it. This is the object drop testing. You can test out how the object bounces and reacts once you drop it. This applies to any object as long as you can hold it and put it in your inventory. This is the centrifuge testing area. In here, you can ride the centrifuge or take control of the centrifuge, but do be careful as the centrifuge will be really fast. There are announcements here to let the players know whether the centrifuge is going to spin or not. Finally, this is the sandbox area. You can mess around in here, like building structures and maybe more. And that's all for the physics labs. This labs is personally my favorite new area for this update. Anyways, let's move on to the final area introduced in this update. This is the chemistry labs. On the left is an area where you can grab chemicals from, and on the right is where the real experiments can be performed. Let's say that you can combine both fields, like for example, physics and chemistry, in order to generate an even better result, in which I'll show you later in the stream. And that's the new architectural changes. There's not many changes to it, but it does offer a lot more gameplay from it, as they play an important role in this update. Once the update drops, you're free to explore and utilize those areas to their fullest potential. Next up is the user interface. Alpha Part 1 brings in a plethora of user interfaces, completely filling up the it's quiet here UIs, and making the game feel more complete, most notably the Options UI, the About UI, the Tasks UI, the Stats UI, and the Occupations UI. Wow, that's a mouthful. It also introduces brand new UIs for players to take a look at, such as the Areas Discovered UI, specifically for visitors, and also the NPC Chat UI, which can be triggered by talking to an NPC. However, Alpha Part 2 introduces a few new UIs, as well as updating the existing UIs from Alpha Part 1. You may have noticed that the button on the bottom right side finally has an icon. I'll get to it later in the stream since this is a large feature coming to this update. However, what I can mention right now is that the minimap got an overhaul. In here, there's options for zooming in and out, as well as the floor colors in the minimap, indicating an occupation-only area aside from visitors. However, that's not all. There's something that can benefit a lot of newcomers. Take a look at this. This is the Locate Destination feature. You can select your destination, and once you select your destination, a path will be generated for you to follow. And once you finally reach your destination, the path will disappear. Something that is not worth mentioning, or maybe technically I mentioned, is the Donate UI. Well, the only difference is that you get to donate and then you get cash in return. But that's the boring way of earning cash. My recommendation is that you should play the game without that feature. But of course, I will not add any absurdly overpriced things in order to encourage players to keep donating. Anyways, back on track. But wait, there's two new additions to the in-game menu, and that is the utility shop as well as the private server controls. Let's take a look at the utility shop first, before heading to the private server controls later in the same presentation category. This is where players can shop for utilities in order to spice up their gameplay. At the moment, there are 8 utilities to choose from and buy, ranging from 500 cash all the way to 10,000 cash. Of course, there won't be any over-the-top utilities that involves distracting other players from their normal routine. I'll explain more about the utilities later, but let's go ahead and head to the Occupations UI. As you can see right here, the Occupations UI got a massive rework. They're now vertical, and they have a graphic behind them, except that there's one notable difference in the UI, and that is the researcher's occupation. I'll get into further detail about that later in the stream. Now, let's say that you're currently hungry right now, and you're going to eat at the internal cafe. I'm hungry as well, so let's talk to the cashier. As you can see, the UI has been updated from Alpha Part 1, so it looks much more cleaner. Back in Alpha Part 1, the chat UI used to have buttons on the side, which makes it really hard to use, and also confusing considering the size of the text and choice buttons. But now, the buttons are moved to the bottom, and they'll be shorter depending on how many options there are. And finally, let's take a look at the private server controls. As you may have noticed, the private server controls button has been moved down here. This is due to the old one being really sluggish every time you try to activate it. Now it sits at a spot where the button is in a more reliable position. The previous private server controls UI is really tedious to use, considering that you have to scroll down just to get to your desired control. In Alpha Part 2, the starting point of the UI has been redesigned and keeping most elements from the old private server controls UI as it was good enough. Now, in order to select the private server control, you can just simply click on your option without having the stress of scrolling down and looking for it. There are 3 new private server controls available here: time controls, NPC dialogue creator, and hunger and energy controls. All of them disables your data store, as well as badges, so be cautious when activating one of those, but let's take a look at them anyways. This is the time controls. You can actually control the day and time here. You can set the days, hours, as well as minutes, or even the real life seconds it takes to jump through a minute. Let's say that I wanted the minutes to go by 60 real life seconds, or 1 real life minute. I can simply type in 60 and then hit save. And now the time is moving 30 times slower from the default 2 seconds for every minute. Next up is the dialogue creator. Let's say that if you wanted to surprise or maybe prank your friends by leading them into talking to your NPC, you can do so. You can add dialogues, as well as choices to the NPC. Once you're satisfied with your dialogue, you're also free to customize your NPC by giving it a name, or maybe you can type in a player name to change your appearance completely. This is the hunger and energy controls. You can pause either or both of them, or maybe have them decay slowly. You can actually set either your or everyone's hunger and energy as well. Either give them a blessing by setting them all to the max, or make their lives difficult by setting all of them to none. Right now, I do not think that it's the right time to demonstrate these to you at the moment, but I will do so in a later part of the stream. And that's all of the changes made to the user interfaces in Alpha Part 2. Not only that, Alpha Part 2 brings in several new user interfaces in order to make the game feel more complete. I can't wait for you to experience the new user interfaces, especially the private server controls. But this is just only the beginning of what's to come for Alpha Part 2. Believe it or not, there are more changes that can be found in this update. Here are some small things that are changed from Alpha Part 1. The posters now have their temporary image replaced. NPCs will walk from Station Alpha to Station Beta if they waited too long. And most importantly, since the game takes place in the year 2021, where COVID-19 was still relevant, there are several changes that alter the gameplay. Like for example, only 10 NPCs are allowed in the internal transit. The NPCs will be wearing a face mask, and there are also temperature scanners set up at the topside entrance. About the posters, don't fret, there will be more coming soon down the line in this update. Now, the moment that you're probably waiting for, the gameplay changes. Alpha Part 1 adds a lot more gameplay on top of its pre-alpha counterpart and changes the way we play ICSCS. Back in pre-alpha, the only thing to do was to play around with the main menu, start up the SPHR Mark II, and control the power lasers. Alpha Part 1 introduces 4 occupations to play as. Now, let's talk about Alpha Part 2 in this category. There is a massive feature that introduces 1 more occupation to play as. However, I'll save that for later since it does not really belong to the gameplay changes. Now, the actual gameplay changes affects all of the occupations, like every single one of them. How? Let's start off with a small but effective feature, the penalty system. The penalty system is a feature where, if you're in a staff occupation and you cancel a task given by an NPC, you will receive a strike. Strikes serve as warning flags to discourage any players abusing the task cancellation feature, as they can also damage the facility's reputation. But be careful, once you have reached the 3rd strike, you won't be able to take on any staff occupations for the rest of the day. Therefore, you need to manage how often you cancel your tasks. Only cancel tasks if you find them too lengthy, or if they don't suit your preferences, but avoid abusing the task cancellation feature. There will also be more ways to get a strike, like shooting an innocent NPC as a security member, for example. With that out of the way, there are several gameplay changes that I have made over the past month. Let's start off with employees. Back in Alpha Part 1, this occupation had been introduced, and it comes with only 2 NPC given tasks, provided if you do not count the question interaction. However, this update brings in some new changes to the overall occupation. Let's look at some examples. First and foremost, in a rare chance, you may encounter a lost item sitting on the floor. Perhaps it was dropped by a visitor during their visit, or it could even appear during off-visiting hours if a visitor happened to be present and accidentally dropped it. As an employee scouring the facility, you might come across one of these lost items. Just keep an eye out for an item with an icon indicating that it's a lost item, belonging to an unknown visitor. What can you do with the lost item? Simply bring it to the lost and found area and wait for someone to claim it. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation in keeping everyone. Once the owner of the lost item arrives, it's time to return it. They will thank you for your effort in finding the lost item before leaving the facility. Now, this is just scratching the surface of what you can do as an employee. There's another task similar to the lost task, but it's a two-parter and comes in 2 variants. This task is called Lost Child. In this scenario, a child gets lost, and the parents will be panicking, struggling to find their lost child. However, they'll stay in one spot as they've been instructed by their parents to wait there. Well, most of the time. Let's explore both variants of this upcoming task. First, a parent is panicking because they have lost their child. For the sake of this stream, I'm going to accept their task. Before you embark on this task, the parents will give you info about what their child is wearing. And wait a minute, there's a new UI feature coming into play. I call it Item Guide. Not only does it tell you how far you need to go to collect lost items, but it also tells you how far you are from the visitor's tour group. This is helpful if you are doing any task that involves finding things. If you prefer a sense of realism, you can simply turn off the item guide in the gameplay options. The reason this mechanic is being introduced is that there are now more spots where lost items can be found, making the task more challenging. Anyways, I found the lost child, and now I need to return them to their parents. You can locate the parent by following the highlight. After a while, I finally reunite the child with their parent. One thing I've forgotten to mention is that every task now has a dialogue when you complete it. Instead of the NPCs only saying, "Thank you, employee," you'll be greeted with a dialogue that you can enjoy for fun, or you can simply press any key or click anywhere to skip through the dialogue. And as always, you gain reputation each time you complete an NPC given task. Now, for the second variant. This time, it's a complete 180, with the child panicking instead of the parent. This variant is a little easier than the previous one, and you can still complete the task as usual, except that it's only half as long as the previous version. There's nothing much to say about this, but it's essentially the same task, albeit shorter than the first variant. Also, the parents will be the ones posting the reviews after the task, whether if it's an upvote or downvote. Anyways, speaking of lost items, there are also some more items that the visitors can lose in the lost items task, such as their phone, their glasses, their camera, and also their backpack. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next occupation, maintenance. Back in Alpha Part 1, maintenance workers can go through the facility and repair certain defective objects. They can also mine in a material cave, although they will have to watch out for stalagmites. Not only that, It also introduces the crafting feature, where maintenance workers can craft a spare part to use. And it also includes a challenge while repairing things, like you need to press down on the key it shows. But there's a trade-off in this challenge back in Alpha Part 1. Mobile players can't tap on the keys it shows up, so they will either fail to repair or get stuck mining. However, Alpha Part 2 changes that. Before we delve deeper into the changes for this occupation, let's start off small. A small change but impactful. In this update, you're finally able to click on the keys as it shows. You can still press down on the keys as well, but it's all up to personal preference. Either you can do repairs and mining with the keyboard or your mouse, and for mobile players, you can finally use your touchscreen to complete the aforementioned activities with ease by simply tapping on the keys as soon as it shows. Now, what if you're running low on spare parts and you do not have time to wait for a delivery truck to come? This is a new NPC interaction called Spare Item. Let me tell you a bit of a backstory here. During the development of Alpha Part 1, there was a scrap task called Item Request, where you have to get an item for the maintenance worker. However, I had decided to reverse the roles, where your colleague offers you a spare item, and you can either take it or leave it. It's all up to you. I know it feels like nothing much has changed, but there will be a huge change once pre-beta rolls around, which feature sub-level 3 and 4. Now, let's talk about the security occupation. In Alpha Part 1, the security occupation was limited to maintaining the reactor and defending the facility against invasions. There wasn't much else to do, right? However, in Alpha Part 2, which builds upon Alpha Part 1, the security occupation has been significantly updated. As you may have guessed, I have been going back and updating each and every one of the staff occupations. There's a new NPC task for security to partake in. It's called Stolen Item. What is this task, you might ask? Well, in a random chance, a visitor's belongings got stolen by a burglar somewhere in the facility. The visitor will be met in the spot, and as a security, you can go ahead and find the burglar. Let's go ahead and give it a try. Finally, I got the stolen item. Now I just needed to return the stolen item to the visitor, and I'm done. Well, that's all for the security occupation. I know it may seem really underwhelming, but believe it or not, later in the stream, there will be more down the line, in which I'll reveal later in the stream. The same thing goes for maintenance as well. However, not only the occupations are updated in Alpha Part 2, but also the events throughout the facility. These events have undergone some changes, primarily visual, but now they offer a lot more fun while playing through them. Another aspect I haven't mentioned yet are the alarms. You might have noticed them while I was walking around showcasing the architectural changes, but purposely saved the explanation till now. These alarms will activate if the facility becomes involved in an event. Let's take a look at an example. Yep, the lights were flickering during the earthquake and the alarm had sounded. And the changes to this event is a lot more than just lights flickering and alarms sounding. It also causes rubble to form around the facility. That's why you'll find pickaxes scattered across sublevel 5 and sublevel 6. Any occupation is eligible to use the pickaxes for clearing rubble, but it also depends on your maintenance level. The rubble obstructs your path towards your destination, and it might even trap players in those sublevels. But don't worry, the pickaxes are conveniently placed in reachable areas, so you won't have to go to the other side by using an elevator to go to another sublevel, then walk to the other side, and then go back down to either sublevel 5 or 6 just to get one. And no, the rubbles won't despawn after a while, so you will have to clear them in order to make way for your pathway, especially when you are trying to complete NPC tasks which involves either sublevel 5 and 6. Not only did Earthquake receive an update, but there's also another event that received an update in Alpha Part 2. Yep, I'm talking about invasions. What exactly updated in this event? Well, allow me to demonstrate.
Okay,
personnel. We have an unauthorized truck entering our premises. Please keep an eye out on it just in case of any suspicious activity. Attention all personnel. We have an invasion incoming. All security must gather around with their weapons and defend the facility from the invaders. And to visitors, please try to hide in a safe spot till further instructions. Right off the bat, you can see a mysterious truck arriving at the facility. What is going on? Well, instead of invaders spawning out of thin air, they'll spawn right after the truck stops. Then, the truck drives off. I even added announcements in it, and I was trying to go for a frightening mood while recording them as well. It even causes the alarms to sound as well. Yep, all of the visitors will evacuate the facility as well. Phew, that was rough, but there are also announcements at the end, depending if you succeeded in defeating the invaders or not. And that's the changes for the existing events. And that concludes all the changes made to the existing features introduced in Alpha Part 1 for this update, Alpha Part 2. During the early days of Alpha Part 2's development, my main focus was on updating some of the features that Alpha Part 1 had previously offered, adding extra details to enhance the gameplay. I'm genuinely proud of how it all turned out. However, these updates are not the biggest things to come in Alpha Part 2. The changes we've discussed so far are just a part of it. Let's now move on to the new and exciting additions that Alpha Part 2 has to offer. There's so much to explore here. Let's take a look at every single one of the new features in Alpha Part 2. As always, I'll start from the smallest new feature in this update. Keep in mind that the things that you have seen isn't final at the moment, and it may be changed depending on the community, or perhaps when I felt there needs to be more. Now, the easy pick for the smallest feature in this update is the medkit feature. Why? Well, although this is a medium feature, it does not compare to the other features in this update so far. However, this feature is more than just healing yourself. Well, let's say that you have lost some of your health. Uh-oh, what can you do? Notice that there are medkits around the facility, and it's hard to not see one as it's on every sub-level, as well as the top side. What can you do with them? Once you have grabbed a medkit, it brings up a user interface telling you the number of users left, the holding status, and the controls. But before I heal, which is what you're waiting for, here's one small feature to the medkit. When you press E, it shows you lines of where you can restock the medkit, like the unstocked first aid stations. However, you can't restock any used medkits since other players might get confused on why is there only a little amount of users left. Anyways, my health is only halfway to the bottom, so I gotta heal. There we go, it does affect the vision, but in the end, your health goes up. The medkit isn't going to heal all of your health either, but just enough so that you can still keep going and not worry about anything that will kill you in an instant. But hold on a second, that's not the only thing the medkit does. I have found an injured visitor on the floor, and I just simply need to heal the visitor. There visitor, the injured visitor will thank you, and you will also gain reputation as a result of this. So, if you were to be injured at any time, or a visitor in the facility were to be injured, this is your go-to item. You can find it in any sub-level or the top site in the facility, and it's also common as well. Anyways, This is the moment you have been waiting for. There are a few massive features lying ahead, and this is the one that you're probably eager to look forward to. Alpha Part 2 is centered around this one, massive feature. One that I had been working and testing on for a very long time. I had put in a lot of blood, sweat and tears in this single feature that you guys have been anticipating for. Take a look. That's right, the new researcher's occupation is coming to Alpha Part 2, and I couldn't be more thrilled about it. The researcher's occupation was initially teased during the Alpha Part 1 stream, when it was still in the planning stages. But now, after months of meticulously planning and developing this feature, I'm incredibly pumped to showcase what it feels like to work as a researcher. This is by far the most effort that I have ever put into an occupation. Take a look. So, this is the brand new researcher's occupation. I'm just only in the team at the moment, but believe it or not, there are a lot of things that hit you upon joining the team. For example, you'll instantly notice a button that you can click on. This brings up the researcher's handbook, which is where researchers can keep track of their progress. There are 3 fields in this occupation: biology, physics, and chemistry. However, most of the things may not happen in real life, so I wouldn't recommend trying any of those activities that you see in the stream in real life. Let's dive deeper into the handbook, shall we? At the top of the handbook, you can see a status relating to the biological activities that you have done in this facility, and if you scroll down, there are physics challenges. Each of the physics activities has 3 challenges they can partake in. Scrolling down once again, you can see a chemistry status. Currently, I haven't discovered any chemicals yet, but once you discover one, you will see it in your handbook, along with the formula used to create that chemical. At the bottommost part of the handbook, you'll find your overall status on physics and chemistry. It shows you your progress on the physics challenges, as well as your progress on the chemicals. There are 12 challenges and 12 chemicals to discover while doing their activities in their respective labs. That's all for the handbook for now. Let's take a look at the tasks. Like every other occupations except for the visitors, researchers will be given a handful of tasks for them to complete. Completing them will boost your EXP, as well as add cash to your paycheck. Anyways, there's nothing much to say about the tasks, so let's get right into the most juicy part of this feature, the labs themselves. First up is the biology labs. This lab contains microscopes and mysterious machines. We'll come back to the mysterious machines later, but for now, let's take a look at how the analysis process goes in this game. First, we need to head into the apparatus storage and grab ourselves a sample dish. Now we have ourselves a sample dish, it's time to grab a sample. There are 2 sample types to choose from, humanoid samples and food samples. Let's go ahead and analyze a humanoid sample. I can simply grab a sample from the closet, and do note that you need a sample dish for this. Now we can analyze it. Let's go ahead and place the sample on the microscope and wait. After this, a findings document will be displayed to you. The finding numbers will go up every time a player analyzes a sample in the biology lab, and you get to see the information about the sample you analyzed. Also, samples that are found in a biology lab aren't the only ones that you can analyze, but we'll come back to it later. Let's move on to the physics labs. Oh boy, this is going to be a huge one. Since the physics labs is the largest lab introduced in this update, it's going to be a while to get through this, so buckle up. Let's start off small, before getting to the big stuff. On the left, we have a lab filled with desks. What's that for, you might ask? Take a look at this. There's a prompt where you can set up a physics scene, and once you do, you can play around with it. The only scene that I have is the cart on a ramp scene. To unlock the rest of them, you have to complete physics challenges. This takes us to the physics testing areas, the main reason why the physics labs is large. Before I carry on, I gotta talk about the apparatus storage for a while. In here, you can get a stamper and a delete tool, and there's a variety of physics related items you can choose from. I should grab myself a large cannonball, a large breakable cube, as well as a stamper and a delete tool. Why? Well, it's something that you might need to get before experimenting in the physics labs. Here's the first physics testing area, the object launcher. It can basically launch anything, from physics related items that you can get from the apparatus labs, to snacks that you get from vending machines. No, seriously, you can do that. Here's an image of someone taking down an entire wall with a chip bag. Anyways, here's how you can test the object launcher. First off, let's go ahead and get a wall setup. There are 5 wall setups to choose from, so feel free to cycle through them till you think that it's the wall setup that you wanted to destroy. Next, you can set the angle. Personally, I prefer the 15-degree angle. It's much easier to see where you're going to aim at, and it also curves when you launch the object. Next up is the pressure. You can adjust it to whatever pressure you want. Let's go for 100%, the most powerful option. Anyways, once you're satisfied with your configuration, you're ready to launch. Oop, what's this? I have completed a challenge. That is 1 out of the 3 challenges that I had completed. You can gradually complete the challenges one by one. The challenges are not randomized and it does not have a time limit, so feel free to take your time. Anyways, that's all for the object launcher for now. You'll see why later. Next up is the wind and air testing. Let's go ahead and build ourselves a structure. See why did I bring along a stamper and a delete tool? That's the reason. I should definitely skip to the part where I finally built the structure, since building it will take a long time. Now that I'm finally done with my structure, you can test how does it react in the chamber. You can set the wind direction, condition, and strength. I'm happy with the strength, so let's only modify the direction and medium. Instead of west, let's go with east. And instead of normal, let's go with dusty. And we're ready to start the testing. There'll be a countdown announcement before the testing starts, encouraging players to vacate the chamber. And if you're daring enough, you can go ahead and go into the chamber. For this, I'll watch the testing from the control room. Okay, the testing is finally over, and my structure is all gone. Well, there goes the effort, I guess. So yeah, that's the wind and air testing for you. Feel free to play around with the other conditions and speeds if you want once this update comes out. Let's move on to the object drop testing. This is the object drop testing. There's a ladder which lets you climb from 25 studs to 75 studs, depending on how far you wanted to drop an object. Let's go for 75 studs, shall we? Thankfully, I have kept this breakable cube. Also, the dropping points are highlighted by the red boxes that you can stand near to. Anyways, here we go. Whoop, the cube broke into smithereens. Well, nothing much to say about this, but here's a fact about this. The larger the object is, the more fragile it is, which means the larger objects will have a harder time surviving once it reaches the ground. And it also decreases the height needed to break. Anyways, let's move on to the last physics lab area, the centrifuge. This is the centrifuge area, a circular area with the control room on the other side. Let's head over to the control room. In here, you can set the direction if you want it clockwise or counterclockwise. Let's select counterclockwise. And set the speed to 300 rounds per minute. I'll leave the countdown and duration the same though. Once you're all set, you can start the centrifuge. Once you have done that, quickly head into the centrifuge and take a seat. The countdown will begin, and you have to use that time to get into the centrifuge. The lowest it can go is 10 seconds, so I'd recommend setting it somewhere around 30 seconds if you wanted to head in there in time. Anyways, here we go. This centrifuge will start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Wow, what a ride. Also, your health depletes due to the intense pressure from the centrifuge. So be sure to watch your health while riding the centrifuge, as it could kill you while you're riding the centrifuge. Anyways, that's all for the centrifuge area and the overall physics labs. Wow, that was a lot to talk about. Now, let's head to the chemistry labs. And finally, the chemistry labs. This lab contains 2 rooms, the apparatus storage and the chemistry lab itself. In here, you can mix 2 chemicals together and then check out the results. There are 3 starting chemicals: berylite, peridite, and zephyrum. There are 9 chemicals that you can discover through those starting chemicals. First of all, let's go ahead and grab ourselves a test tube. You do need a test tube in order to fill them up with a specific chemical. Anyways, let's grab our chemicals. I'm going to combine 2 of the same chemicals together to see what happens. Anyways, there are 2 actions that you can do with test tubes. You can drink it or give it. I'm not going to drink it at the moment because I wanted to put them into a chemical mixer. And then, you're prompted to mix the 2 chemicals to produce a result. So, let's do exactly that. Voila! Blazite. That's one of the 12 discoverable chemicals that you can make. Once you discover the chemical, you can unlock a storage closet just in case you wanted to store a chemical that you made from combining the starter chemicals, so you won't have to go through the combination process again. Feel free to try out every combination of the starting chemicals and see what you can get. However, I did say one thing previously while demonstrating the object launcher, and the keyword is yet. That's because there's still more to this. Let me explain. So, there's an item chemical tester on every desk in this lab, right? Let's go ahead and grab an item from a physics lab, and this time, I'm going with the large unbreakable cube. Now, I'm back in the chemistry lab, and I have blazite and the large unbreakable cube. You can simply put the cube in the item chemical tester, and then, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to pour blazite all over it. It coats the cube in a nice orange color, and I'm going to take it back to the physics lab. Come here, cube. Now, I'm back at the physics lab. You know what I'm going to do? Bang! This actually produces more damage than a non-chemical version of an item. To put it into perspective, blazite makes the damage twice as powerful, and it has an explosion effect added once my cube hits the wall. Now, my cube is white, indicating that once you launch a chemical covered object, you'll have to apply the same chemical or another chemical in order to see the same or a different result, respectively. There are 13 outcomes from this, 12 of them being chemical related, and 1 being the normal outcome. The starting chemicals will only color the object, but it does not do anything in terms of making a chemical reaction happen. Now, what about snacks? I got a bag of chips from a vending machine, and I'm going to cover it in chemical. For this, I'm going to create a new chemical. Let's try combining 2 zephyrums together, and then pour it onto my bag of chips. Ta-da! A recolored bag of chips. Well, not really, because once you eat one, the color of the bag starts to fade to white, and you'll get a force field. So that means, regardless of how you consume the chemical, whether if it's from a vending machine item or directly from the test tube, the effects will still apply to you. And yep, effects are coming to Alpha Part 2. It has a pretty interesting story to it actually. The effects feature was actually scripted back in Alpha Part 1, but it went unused because I had no time to actually implement it. But ever since Alpha Part 2 is finally in development, it's high time that I finally bring this feature to this update. Do not worry, you might see more of this in and off the stream. Also, remember how I said that the samples from the biology lab aren't the only things you can analyze? Well, it is true. You can actually analyze the chemicals that you have created or directly taken from the chemistry labs. So, I have a chemical here. It's called radicite. You can use a sample dish to collect chemicals from the chemistry labs for analysis. Now, let's analyze this. And here's the findings. And what's this? It could be used as a chemical to mix with another chemical? I wonder what is it meant to be. You'll find out once the update drops, since I'm probably betting that players will flock to that occupation to play with it. I guess that's the community nowadays, right? Anyways, that concludes the researcher's occupation. This occupation is a really big one, and I had spent a lot of time working on it. And I also had a lot to talk about in this occupation. To be fair, this occupation is meant to be the highlight of Alpha Part 2. I can't wait for you guys to play around in this occupation and see what you guys can come up with. I know, this occupation is really imbalanced within the other tree, but hopefully in the future, I'm able to add more of them. Anyways, here's the next thing I wanted to show you. Now, you may be wondering, why am I in the surveillance room in the security offices? Well, it's because I would like to let you know that Columns OS has an update from version 1.0.0 to version 1.1.0. Let's take a look at the new version. Right off the bat, you may immediately notice two new applications on the desktop, the File Viewer and ICU. Yep, it's called that, but I'll get to it later. Before we tackle on the new applications, let's go ahead and see what's updated, starting with the browser. There's two new sites that you can visit, Atom Direct and SafeCloud. Oh yeah, one thing I've forgotten to mention before we take a look at the new sites is that medkits can actually run out around the facility over time. So to address this, there's an update to the All Things Shop website where you can now purchase medkits from it. As for the few can, we'll come back to that later. Now, let's move on to the second website that has been changed, the Reveal My Place website. Wait a minute, there's a new button that you can click on. I wonder where it leads to. Oh, apparently it's showing off other places as well. That's because there's a new feature where you can compete with other places to claim the place of the day spot, and you can also see the overall place ratings and how each place is currently doing. Additionally, the difficulty will be nerfed down when there are fewer players in the server. That's all of the updates made to the existing sites in this version. Let's start off with Atom Direct. This is a site where you can buy apparatus from. There are sections where you can buy biological samples, physics objects, and chemicals, but remember to acknowledge the warning before proceeding. Anyways, just like All Things Shop, you can choose the number of crates and your shipping service. And finally, you can review your order right here. You can either place it or cancel it, since you've given your order review before you proceed with the payment. Let's cancel it for now. The delivery system will still function the same as what happens when you order things from All Things Shop. Your products will arrive in a delivery truck, you grab the crate, and then restock. The second new site that is included in Columns OS update is SafeCloud. This is a cloud storage site where you can store your files in. There's a welcome note from the site team, and you can click it. You can see the contents of the file itself. Now you're wondering, how does this really work? Well, let's head over to a new app introduced in this update, File Viewer. In here, I do not have any files at the moment, but that's all about to change. I'm going to create a new text file and enter some text in there. I can rename it to whatever I want, and then I can click Save. Let's create an image file as well. It starts off as a blank image, but you can change that with the Edit button. There, now my files are saved. One important thing to note here is that when a player goes onto the same computer as you did previously, they can see your files and basically do anything to it. This is where SafeCloud comes into play. You can put your files up there. How? Let's go ahead and go back to our good old friend SafeCloud. Now, what can you do here? There are three buttons here: download, delete, and upload. The download button allows you to download your selected file from the cloud. The delete button deletes the file you click on. It will change the file list color, indicating that you're in either the download or delete mode on the website. But how about uploading up to the cloud? Okay, here's both of the files that I have created beforehand, and you can select between your personal storage or your workplace storage. The personal storage means that no one can access it aside from you, while the workplace storage is available to everyone, meaning people can download the files from there. It's also perfect for sharing files to people without the need for passing the computer to another person. Let's go ahead and put our files on the cloud, shall we? I'll put my text file in my personal storage and my image files into my workplace storage. Let's say that I now wanted to use another computer, right? So, let's do it. Okay, this time there's no file stored on this computer. Each computer has its own storage drive, so in order to retrieve your files, you need to download them from the cloud. Let's head back into SafeCloud once again and download our files. I can simply click on the download button and then click the files I wanted to download, both from my personal and workplace storage. And there you go, your files are in the computer. You can edit them and then send it back to the cloud if you want, but make sure to delete it from the cloud before doing so. And finally, I'm going to show you what the ICU app is for. Here's the shocker. The Columns OS update isn't the reason why I have went to the surveillance room, but rather, every computer in there has that app installed. Let's dive into it. Here, you can select your camera category and then select your desired camera. You can look into them and observe every single move. This way, it should be easier to detect anything suspicious. And that's all for the new Columns OS update. A file system, as well as 2 new sites, will be bundled with the update once Alpha Part 2 is finally out. Here's another feature that I was working on. Well, not really a feature, but 3 new features. Yep, 3. They're actually events that I previously planned in the Alpha Part 1 stream. Here's one of them. Wait, who vandalized this area? And also, there's a report prompt where you can report a vandalism and it will alert everyone in the facility. Let's do it. Okay, now you just need to find the vandalizer. Due to the facility's massive layout, it can be pretty difficult. However, to remedy this, if the server player count is low, you will have more time to find the vandalizer. It's like a manhunt for one person. Also, the vandalism can happen in the internal archives, where one of the displays got their glass cracked, as well as any of the sublevels in the facility, where it's a graffiti on the wall. Let's go ahead and find the vandalizer and bring them to justice. There you go, I have finally detained the vandalizer. Now, you may be wondering, where did the vandalizer go? Well, if you remember back in the Alpha Part 1 stream, I mentioned that every single one of the vandalizers that got detained will be put into a holding cell, and that's exactly what happened. After a few minutes, they will be brought to a prison complex, which means that the holding cells in the facility acts as a temporary prison for vandalizers. However, it is possible for the vandalizer to run away and escape, and if you're playing alone, worry not. The difficulty of tripping the vandalizer will be nerfed, depending on the number of players in the server. Anyways, this isn't the only new event coming to this update. There's another event which was viewed by a lot of people, according to a video in the collection of Alpha Part 2 sneak peeks. Yep, you know what I'm talking about. Here it is. You may have to pay attention to the announcements, since you will have to listen to the announcement before judging that it's going to happen. Attention facility. Decrease in power levels throughout the facility. Please remain alert and report any unusual activity or disruptions as we investigate the issue. Attention facility personnel. Our monitoring systems indicate a further decline in power levels. We're actively working to identify the cause and restore normal operations. In the meantime, please exercise caution and be prepared for potential interruptions. This is the blackout event, an event where the power level starts to fall to its knees, and the maintenance workers have to identify the underlying cause of it. But due to the ambient around the facility, this makes it really difficult to fix the issue once you have found the cause. This is where the emergency generators come into play. However, it's missing something important: fuel. Without it, the emergency generators won't be able to operate. So in order to get fuel, you need to head on to the emergency generators control room. By default, the emergency generators are out of fuel, but they're conveniently placed in the control room, so you won't have to walk too far to get one and then go back to the emergency generators in order to fuel it. Once you have power, like at least one generator is enabled, you can finally try to find the cause of the blackout, but be quick as the fuel level will drop over time. But since it's hard to do this alone in the server, the decrease rate for the fuel level will be slower, so you will have more time to find the problematic cause of the blackout. Aha! That's what's causing the blackout all this time. However, there's one very important thing to note here. You actually need a wrench in order to fix the issue, so I'd recommend getting a wrench first if you're a maintenance worker, since you'll never know when a blackout will happen. Remember that this prompt has a long holding duration, so you must have a wrench beforehand. Otherwise, it will be a waste of time attempting to fix it without a wrench. There we go. The issue has finally been resolved. But something about the facility was damaged, and that is the reputation. Why? Well, during the blackout, eager visitors who were disappointed when they tried to visit the facility, only for them to see that it's close to the blackout, so you'll need to act quick before the facility's reputation is down in the toilet. At least for players, your reputation won't go down, so there's nothing critical to worry about. And that's the blackout event. And yep, the sneak peek showcasing this event is actually the most viewed sneak peek in the playlist. So I'm pretty much thinking that you guys were actually expecting this when I mentioned that there's another event coming. However, this event and the vandalism event aren't the only events coming to the update. There is one last event that I wanted to talk about. Take a look. Uh-oh, I received a status stating that I have caught an unknown disease. This is a sign that you need to isolate from people, otherwise others can catch a disease. But even during this time, you won't have to yet. No, the real problem will start after a few moments. And there it is, the event itself. This is an event that you have to be quick about. All the visitors will leave the facility since you do not really want other visitors to catch it as well. Anyways, the person that caught an unknown disease will start sneezing, and the sneeze particles can transmit to others as well upon touch. This event is called Plague, the final event teased in the Alpha Part 1 stream. What do you do in this situation? Well, as a researcher, your task is to create a cure for the unknown disease. But that does not necessarily mean that you're immune to the particles though. So how do you do it? Well, first and foremost, you need a sample dish in order to collect samples of the sneeze particles. Okay, I have one here, so I can collect it and send it to the biology lab for analysis. Here we go! Oh boy, you need 2 chemicals for the medicine. Well, in that case, you need to make 2 chemicals. Sometimes, if you're lucky enough, you can skip the chemical making process if it's one of the starting chemicals, like the one I have here. Anyways, let's get making. So I simply head on to the chemistry lab and make 2 chemicals. I know, it's a pretty daunting task, but it's over once you make the medicine and distribute it to the others. Now, let's get to making the medicine. Congratulations on making medicine. That's a significant achievement. And if you're the one who made it, you'll be instantly cured. But there's still others who need to be cured, so you must administer the medicine to them as well. Simply bump into the infected individuals while having the medicine equipped to cure them. Don't worry about getting infected again. Once you're cured, you become immune to the disease. Now that the plague is over, it's a relief to return to normal operations. However, there's a crucial point to consider. You might say, hey, the disease does not even damage anyone in the facility, so I can have the day act as normal, right? Well, no. If the plague wasn't eradicated on time, there's a severe consequence to face. The authorities will arrive at the facility and force it to shut down for the day. This will not only freeze the lights on Review My Place, but it will also prevent you from gaining reputation as well. Anyways, that's all of the events, and that's it for the plague event as well. But I'm not done yet. There's still a few more features to tackle, so here's something that I'm really excited to unveil. According to 3 different people that sent a suggestion in the Trello board, they wanted a help system. It's a pretty daunting feature to work on, but I figured, if that's what people want, why not? But guess what? All this time, it was planned for Alpha Part 2, before it had even begun development. I can't implement it earlier as I wanted to get the more crucial features done first before working on it. But now that it's here, it's time to show it to you. This replaces the Not Available button at the bottom right corner, and I figured I should give it more charm that encourages players to go through it at least once. Let me show you. This is Guidely. Guidely is your instructor in the all-new guide feature. They will actually guide you through the fundamentals of this facility and how you can play as every occupation. Even if they only serve as only the guide for this feature, they will play a more major role in a future update. Okay, after the introduction, you're ready to select a guide to play in. I'm gonna choose this one. Also, it does offer alternate dialogues that you can go through as well, which can sometimes throw Guidely off guard. But you're free to play through the dialogue in a way you want, like either go through the guide normally or experiment with a different dialogue. Now, how about another one? This time, let's go ahead and choose this guide. Well, not every guide requires you to sit through it without doing anything. This guide is an example of it. In this case, I get to insert the containers in here. Of course, this won't impact the players back in the facility.
Stabilized by calling out the Mark II startup sequence initiated. Please make your way to the outside of the reactor chamber.
Oh Guidely, you mischievous person. Well, do not worry. They're sometimes playful in those guides, and you can respond to them however you want, maybe depending on your personality in real life, or you just wanted to get a funny response. Anyways, that's all of the guide system. 11 guides to experience, with one more at the end that is locked. However, you may have noticed that after I completed a guide, it marks the guide is complete. So for new players, you're welcome. Now you can go through it, and hopefully you can finally get an idea about how you can play ICSCS, and you can find your playstyle with the guide. And finally, I'm going to show you the utility shop. Right now, this update comes with 8 utilities that you can purchase and use. They're also one-time use utilities, which means that you can only use it once after buying it. And they also won't save after purchase, which means that after you have bought it, you can't get it back if you leave the game or your character died. For non-one-time use utilities, they'll save after you leave the game, so you will receive them once you rejoin. Let's take a look at all 8 of the utilities. First up is the flashlight. This flashlight is a really unique one, to say the least. It offers 4 different modes you can cycle through, which makes your flashlight brighter, or you can make it flash, like what you would set your flashlight as for people to see that you're in distress. Next up is pemmican, a type of snack which fills up your hunger to 100%, and it's a one-time use utility, so that means it can only be used once. So be sure to be considerate on when you need it. The third utility is called energy, an energy drink that fills up your energy to 100%. It's also a one-time use utility, so it's like the same deal as the pemmican. The fourth utility is undecay. It pauses every single one of your needs for 60 seconds. So that means you can do a lot more after using this, but I'd recommend saving it for later, because you might not know when will you need it. Now, the fifth utility is a speed coil. If your energy is low, you can't run, but with this speed coil, you can now boost yourself through the massive facility, perfect for those without any energy to move around. Next up is the sixth utility, and it turns out to be my favorite utility to use so far, Column Note. This is a laptop that can only be used while seated, whether it's on a bench or a couch. It comes with Columns OS, judging by the name, and it has the same interface as Columns OS as well, but with a slight difference, or should I say, disadvantage. It has a battery system in which it automatically shuts down once the battery power reaches 0, and in order to charge it, simply leave it in your inventory and wait for the battery to charge. The seventh utility is the Handy 2 AIO. This is a pickaxe and a wrench combined into one. It can be your replacement to pickaxes and wrenches, so you won't have to take one from the maintenance storage. However, it does not make the mining, fixing, or clearing any faster, but it does save your time getting a pickaxe and wrench. Once you have bought the utility, it will only be given to you if you're a maintenance worker, but worry not if you did not receive it, since the next time you switch to maintenance, you'll have it in your inventory. And now, the final utility, the teleportation coil. It allows you to teleport from one place to another without sacrificing any of your own items. However, there's one thing to note, is that after you have used it, there will be a 2-minute cooldown before you can use it again. But it saves a lot of time going places. And that's all of the utilities. The utilities will be sure to enhance the gameplay one way or another. The utilities won't harm any other players or distract them from your daily routine, but they're sure to make repetitive tasks much easier to do. Now, before I wrap up what this update offers, let's head to the one last thing that I haven't tackled on yet, and that is the private server controls. Earlier in the stream, I said that it wasn't the right time to demonstrate it to you guys yet, but now the time has finally come. I can finally demonstrate the 3 new private server control options coming to this update. This is the time controls. You can modify the day and time as well as the delay between minutes. Let's go ahead and set the day to Friday, and for my hours, I'm going to set it to 21, since you need to type in the hours in the 24-hour time format. Once you're satisfied, you can click apply, and you can see the changes almost immediately. But do note that all of the new private server controls I'm going to introduce will disable badges and saving, so that's one thing to note. Next up is the dialogue creator. You can actually create an NPC with a specific dialogue you have made. So let's go ahead and create a dialogue. I can change the greeting to something else. How about, "Hey fellow watchers." And I wanted my dialogue option to be, "Hello there." You can actually create multiple options after a single dialogue, so the only thing limiting you while creating those is your creativity. Next, you can select on the option and edit the response of it. This is what the NPC will say after you click on the option in the NPC user interface. I'm going to make the response, so I'd like to say thanks for watching the stream. You can edit the option, such as the name of the option, as well as the response of it, and you can delete it as well, even though that would actually delete the responses and options ahead of it, if you have any. And finally, you can set the NPC's username, whether if it's yourself, or maybe a friend of yours, or maybe your favorite YouTuber or developer. With your dialogue now complete, it's time to test. I can click on Spawn NPC, and then it will spawn near me. I can talk to it, and as you have noticed, that's the dialogue that I had set for the NPC. And you can also clear the NPCs from the area once you're done playing with them. You might be able to also prank your friends or probably anyone in your own private server with this. And finally, this is the hunger and energy controls. You're free to set everyone's or your own hunger and energy to specific percentage, and you can also set the decay options as well. Let's say that you wanted to almost have no decay in your hunger and energy, you can do that too. Once you click apply, the hunger and energy changes will be apparent, but not the decay rate. It will be applied after the next hunger or energy decay. And that's all of the features coming to Alpha Part 2. Wow, I had a lot to say about the new things coming to this update. After around 9 months of development, it is finally done. Now, let's recap what I had shown you in the stream. The introduction of new areas such as the labs and the lost and found area, as well as a few changes to the existing areas, updates to the user interfaces, as well as new ones, some changes to the existing occupations and events, medkits, the researcher's occupation, an update to Columns OS, new events, utilities that can enhance your gameplay, and the new private server controls. Those aforementioned features aren't final yet, and may be subject to change, depending on the testing feedback. The things that are worth mentioning is that Alpha Part 2 will feature 20 new badges and 5 new OSTs for you to earn and enjoy. Now you may be wondering, when can you play the update? Right now I do not have a concrete date on when you can play it, but the update will come out at around late August to early September. And for the Canary build, the price of the Canary Access Game Pass will be bumped up to 100 Robux, which is still affordable for most of you. But wait, I'm going to make this even better. To make up for the times where the development speed is slow due to college, I'm going to have ICSCS Canary open for an entire week without the need of owning the Game Pass, so you can try out the new features as much as you want. In addition to that, there's a trailer that I had whipped up. Take a look. And finally, with that out of the way, I wanted to talk about the future of ICSCS. After 2 years of development, ICSCS is finally moving from its alpha phase into the pre-beta phase. The pre-beta development is expected to start around October 31st, and the release date is anticipated to be in 2024. It's going to be a significant milestone for the game, and you can expect some exciting changes and new features in the future. However, I must mention that due to me going back to college, development may experience some slowdowns. I have big plans for pre-beta, though I can't reveal anything just yet. What I can share about it is that pre-beta will introduce 2 new sublevels, sublevel 3 and sublevel 4. Sublevel 3, known as the database sublevel, will be related to databases, and maintenance workers will be responsible for managing the data there. It will play a crucial role in the facility, as issues may arise that require immediate action, which could jeopardize others and their own routines. Sublevel 4, known as the office sublevel, will be an exclusive area for employees to perform their tasks, engage in conversations, and have fun. There's a lot I plan to do with this sublevel, but it will take time to develop, and you can expect to see it in 2024. With the addition of the researcher's occupation in Alpha Part 2, there's a need to balance the gameplay among all the occupations. Sublevel 3 and 4 will aim to address this imbalance and provide a fair amount of gameplay for each occupation, which means that the researcher's occupation might have little to no changes in that update. While the exhibition hall was scrapped, I have plans to bring it back in pre-beta. It will serve a greater purpose than just an exhibition hall, but I can't reveal the details just yet. This update is currently in the planning stages, and I'm excited to show progress in the future. However, there won't be pre-beta Part 1 or Part 2 updates. It will be one comprehensive update that will be substantial. I plan to give you sneak peeks along the way in the form of clues till the first video about it drops, and the first one may arrive in 2024, though it depends on its readiness for showcasing. Thank you for your support and patience as I work on making this ambitious update. Your feedback has been invaluable, and I'm looking forward to sharing the exciting journey ahead with all of you. But for now, that's all I have to offer. Of course, there will be a Q&A during the post stream, and you're free to ask questions you desire. Anyways, I gotta get going, so once again, thank you for watching the stream, and I'll see you next time.